On today's episode, I'll break down why the Blackhawks offseason has been disappointing and the additions of Sam Lafferty and Dominic Toninato.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and check me out on X at Jack Bushman 2, but make sure to follow my strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey. That way you don't miss out on any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And I also got to let you all know real quick that today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Make sure to go and check out FanDuel.com right now or download the FanDuel Sportsbook app if you're not already a member, and you can get $150 worth of bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins all throughout the summer. All right, happy 4th of July weekend, Blackhawks fans. Hope you all are honestly not even tuning into this until like Monday morning. Not that I'd pass any judgment or anything on anyone who is tuning in throughout the course of the weekend, as I know there's lots of Blackhawks sickos out there, but I just hope that everyone's enjoying the wonderful weather that we're getting here in the Chicagoland area and spending it with friends and family, grilling it up, beaching, boating, whatever it may be, celebrating the United States of America. Hope everyone's 4th of July weekend has been amazing up to this point. Sadly, though, it's not the happiest of tunes for yours truly to sing here to open things up on the show, as our Chicago Blackhawks have not done a whole heck of a lot of anything through the opening 3 days of free agency. Just two moves to break down thus far impacting the NHL club. One, arguably an NHL move in signing Dominic Toninato, and then the other wasn't even an addition through free agency. It was acquiring Sam Lafferty for real this time, by the way, in a trade with the Buffalo Sabres. Those two moves I will be getting to here in segment 2 on today's show, as well as updates on the Blackhawks RFAs like Arvid Soderblom, Wyatt, Kaiser, and Louis Crevier. That'll be happening during segment 3. And a reminder that everything is always time-coded down in the description, so you can jump around to whatever point you want in every single episode. But to open things up on the show here today, I just think the larger topic of conversation that I got to get to first is the lack of moves made by general manager Kyle Davidson, because I know there are lots of frustrated Blackhawks fans out there because of the lack of moves made. And I completely understand that. To see, this entire summer just basically be one big tease for us Blackhawks fans with, the JJ Peterka rumors. The Blackhawks were reportedly heavily involved in those trade discussions with the Buffalo Sabres. That didn't wind up happening. Then there's the rumors of Michael Misa maybe falling down to number 3. That, of course, didn't end up happening. Never felt like the Blackhawks were really in the conversation for Mitch Marner. He ended up getting traded to the Vegas Golden Knights. Never seemed like they made a legitimate run or anything at guys like Brock Besser, who remained with the Vancouver Canucks, or Nikolai Ehlers, who just signed with the Carolina Hurricanes. Sam Bennett wound up staying with the Florida Panthers. So it just feels like there's not a whole lot to get excited about here this summer for us Blackhawks fans. And while I do understand why Kyle Davidson has done what he's done here so far this summer, and I do like the moves of, acquiring Andre Burakovsky in a 1-for-1 swap for Joe Veleno, who was going to be a buyout candidate here in Chicago, did end up getting bought out by the Seattle Kraken. That's no-brainer win for the Blackhawks there. And I also like bringing back Ryan Donato with a $4 million cap hit. That's going to be easy money given the way the salary cap's going to go up these next few years. But for those, with the way it seems like the free agent market is now skin and bone, not that there was, a whole lot on the market in the first place. And I do think that needs to be weighed into consideration why the Blackhawks were so quiet this summer. But still, at the end of the day, for Andre Burakovsky and bringing back Ryan Donato, for those to be the two most notable moves for the Blackhawks here this summer, it's pretty gosh darn disappointing to me. And here's why in particular. I understand Kyle Davidson's plan. I understand him being patient, and I've been very patient along with him throughout this process. And I get, wanting to give Connor Bedard and Frank Nazar and whoever else of the kids, we'll see what winds up happening in training camp. I get wanting to give them the legitimate top 9 opportunities next year and not wanting to clog up the depth chart for them. But I still feel like they could have been giving Bedard, Nazar, Moore, Green, maybe Lardis, whoever it's going to be. I still feel like they would have gotten the lion's share of opportunities had the Blackhawks just gone out and acquired a top 6 forward instead of getting Andre Burakovsky. Like, if it had to be one or the other, so be it for Andre Burakovsky, because in my opinion, undoubtedly, it would have been a better offseason so far for the Blackhawks if they got a legitimate top 6 ad and brought back Ryan Donato. If those were the two most notable moves for the Blackhawks here this summer, I think it would have been a much easier pill for us to swallow as Blackhawks fans. Also, we're entering year 3 of Connor Bedard's NHL career now, and it still feels like in none of those 3 seasons, we'll still see what's going to transpire throughout the rest of the summer. But again, feels like the market's pretty much said and done at this point. It just feels like we haven't put Connor Bedard in the best position possible to go and succeed. And when the Blackhawks have as much financial flexibility that as they do, it's frustrating that they haven't been able to do more. And just projecting what the top line would be as of right now, Donato, Bedard, and Bertuzzi, just like it was for a little bit last year, or Donato, Bedard, and Teuvo Teravainen, Donato, Bedard, Burakovsky. Any way you slice it, it's not good enough for 3 consecutive seasons now. And on top of that, I hope this doesn't wind up being the case. Bedard finished the season much better than he started it. And I do believe, getting Frank Nazar and more players with speed, getting Ilya Mikheyev some more opportunities as a guy who can play with some pace, right? I think all of that stuff, also getting Luke Richardson out of there and playing a more open offensive style, I think all of that stuff benefited Connor Bedard. But again, make no mistake about it, this Blackhawks offense is probably still going to be among the worst in the entire NHL next year. I hope that's not going to be the case, but if Connor Bedard does struggle at times, it's just going to be really frustrating as someone who knows how skilled this kid is to hear the bozos be like, oh, why isn't Connor Bedard dominate and all that stuff, when in reality, he doesn't have enough help and the entire offense is struggling. Like, it would just be really frustrating to see Connor Bedard in that position once again, while still being only 20 years old. And then altogether, it's just another summer where it's hard to get Blackhawks fans excited. And that's just been far too common of a theme these last 2 summers. We're really pushing the patience of this fan base. And again, I understand Kyle Davidson's plan completely. And I get being patient and giving the kids the opportunities. And I also get this summer with the free agent market. I mean, how many legitimate top 6 options were out there for Kyle Davidson? I get that's part of it. And I understand, they probably also didn't want to go and rush into a contract, likely a sizable one, have to give out some pretty good money to a player who maybe they didn't love when they're still not in that contention window. I understand all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, it just feels like something should have happened to address this top 6, whether it was JJ Peterka or whether it was using some of the draft capital at the NHL draft to go and get a player through the trade market or through the free agent market. To not get anyone out of any of those, that's really disappointing. No beating around the bush. To me, it's just not good enough of a summer so far for general manager Kyle Davidson. We'll see what transpires again over these next couple of weeks before the offseason really hits its, end. But it just feels pretty underwhelming what the Blackhawks have done up to this point. And to make only the couple of moves that they did on July 1st, I see why it happened, but it still, to me, isn't good enough at this point in time. And to not give Connor Bedard more help any way you want to slice it, that's disappointing. So there's my take on GMKD staying out of the top 6 free agent market thus far in free agency. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I'll break down Sam Lafferty returning in a trade through with the Buffalo Sabres, and Dominic Toninato signing a 2-way contract. But first, I do got to talk to you all real quick about the fine folks over at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it even more thrilling? It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. And whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the 9th inning, FanDuel really makes it feel like I'm a part of the action. And are you new to FanDuel? Well, then that's perfect, because new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All you got to do is open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon in order to get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get in on the action today. Before I get into segment 2, Blackhawks fans, just a reminder, if you're enjoying what you're watching here today on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks. Smash that like button down below as well. And if you're tuning in through an audio platform, please make sure to rate and review the podcast, preferably with a 5-star rating, as that always puts a big smile on my face. All of it is 100% free and won't cost you anything. Helps me out in a massive way in growing my platform. But segment 2 here today, the Blackhawks did make a couple of moves as the free agent market opened up earlier this week. The first one they made wasn't technically a free agent addition. It was bringing back Sam Lafferty for the 3rd time in general manager Kyle Davidson's tenure. This time, though, he is actually going to be staying on with the club. If you all remember, they acquired him as a UFA last summer, but didn't end up negotiating with his rights. They let him hit the UFA market. He is going to be remaining with the Blackhawks this time, though, as he has 1 year left on his current deal with a $2 million cap hit. And the Blackhawks got him in a deal from with the Sabres in exchange for a 2026 6th-round pick. So pretty easy piece of business here for GM KD. Lafferty, though, not a great season last year with the Sabres. Played in 60 games for them. He is now 30 years old, by the way, and he only tallied 7 points in those 60 games, 4 goals and 3 assists. In the 23-24 season, though, with the Vancouver Canucks, he was much more productive, had 24 points, 13 goals, and 11 assists in 79 games. And of course, the Blackhawks traded him just a few years ago to the Toronto Maple Leafs. That netted them the 25th overall selection, as it turned out, in this year's draft, which of course wound up being Vaslav Nestrasil. While this isn't a needle-moving addition for GM KD, I do like this one, actually, even though it could take up a spot on the roster over one of the young guys. Lafferty still isn't someone who has to be playing on a nightly basis for this Blackhawks squad. He can play the center or the wing position. And if Ryan Green doesn't, make the NHL roster out of camp, I have been wondering who, could be the Blackhawks 4th-line center. And I don't even know if that's a spot that they'd necessarily, want Ryan Green to be in. Maybe they'd want him in, a 3rd-line spot if he does make the NHL roster. I don't know, but Sam Lafferty could be that 4th-line center guy, and he adds more grit and more sandpaper to the bottom 6, which I do think the Blackhawks need and have been reportedly wanting to address since Pat Maroon, of course, retired following this season. Lafferty's someone who can provide some protection and physicality out there on the ice. 6'2", 205 pounds, not afraid to throw the hands around, and also provide some good speed in the bottom 6. I'm sure you all remember the sheer number of opportunities that Sam Lafferty would create for himself when he was with the Blackhawks. He just wasn't able to capitalize or bury any of them. That's kind of been the narrative all around his career, but I do think this checks a box and is a smart addition by general manager Kyle Davidson. Lafferty's someone who can provide some energy, can play on the penalty kill, is physical, has some good size to him. And again, even though he might take up a spot over one of the youngsters, he doesn't have to be playing on a nightly basis. He can be utilized as one of the extras for head coach Jeff Blashill. And again, he's an expiring contract, so maybe GM KD could go and flip him at the trade deadline and get another good asset in return here. But I do like the addition of Sam Lafferty. Don't love that it's again, one of the most noteworthy moves that one of the only moves that the Blackhawks have made here over the last week. The second move, their only free agent move technically, was giving 31-year-old center Dominic Toninato a 2-year, two-way contract with an $850,000 cap hit. Another player with size who could play in the bottom six or maybe even in that fourth line center role. Is Toninato is 6'2", 201 pounds. Hasn't really played much in the NHL the last 3 years, though. Has only played in 25 games since the start of the 22-23 season with the Winnipeg Jets. He's mostly been playing down with the Manitoba Moose at the AHL level. In 23-24, he was their alternate captain. And then last year, he was actually the man rocking the sea for the Manitoba Moose. So maybe could even be someone who spends the lion's share of this season with the Rockford Ice Hogs. But another guy who, again, can play center, has some good size to him. Doubt he's going to be impacting the NHL club all that much. So not one that really is all that impactful here for the Chicago Blackhawks. But clearly through the NHL draft and through the trade market and free agency, Kyle Davidson is wanting to get more size and skill. Did that mainly in the draft with guys like Vasilov Nestrasil, Mason West, and of course Anton Frondell. But he also wanted to get size and protection for some of the skill players that he's drafted over these last few years. That has been super apparent here. The Sam Lafferty move has that written all over it, and Dominic Toninato can kind of be in that same vein, both in the NHL if he were to be up with the Blackhawks and also in the AHL with the Rockford Ice Hogs, right? As there's going to be a lot of, young, skilled prospects on the scene these next 2 years, which Toninato signed a 2-year deal. He could provide some protection and good veteran leadership for those guys down in Rockford. So that's what the Blackhawks have addressed here so far at this point in the summer. There's also been some speculation that they could be looking to add another depth defenseman, maybe someone in a similar vein to TJ Brody, but hopefully a little bit more serviceable. I've seen, Mark-Edouard Vlasic, Alex Vlasic's cousin, of course. His name has been thrown around a little bit. I don't know if that would necessarily make sense for either parties at this point in time. I personally would just much rather have Louis Crevier serve as the seventh defenseman if you're going to be bringing him back as an RFA. We've done this really the last 2 years where, Lou's developed nicely in Rockford, but he could continue developing down there. I just feel like at this point in time, you might as well just go have him be in the seventh around the big boys. And maybe if Connor Murphy gets dealt at the deadline, then he can slide into that third pairing right defenseman type of role. But there are my thoughts on the two moves the Blackhawks have made so far since the free agent market opened up, acquiring Sam Lafferty once again from the Buffalo Sabres and signing Dominic Toninato to a 2-year contract. Coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, before I wrap up today's show, I'll get into the latest updates on the Blackhawks restricted free agents. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just want to say thank you real quick to everyone out there for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where there is no offseason, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage that you love from Locked On. And you can easily find Locked On NHL right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Quick drink of water. Apologies. Segment 3. The Blackhawks RFA decisions were pretty cut and dry here this summer with Philipp Kurashev, Wyatt Kaiser, Louis Crevier, and Arvid Soderblom being the notables. Cole Gutman, who is technically a Class 6 UFA, I believe, as well as Jalen Lipin, Aku Ratu, and Antti Sorella. Those were the AHL RFAs that the Blackhawks had to make decisions on. No real surprises there that none of those 4 that I just mentioned received qualifying offers here from the Blackhawks and now are officially unrestricted free agents. The only noteworthy update we got to get into is Philipp Kurashev did not receive a qualifying offer from the Blackhawks. But that's not really all that surprising based on numerous reports leading up to July 1st. We knew this was going to be the case after Kurashev's production dove off a cliff here this season. He had a stellar 23-24 campaign, was the one who clicked with Connor Bedard the most in his rookie season and posted career highs all across the board, but just did not look like the same player here this season. Looked checked out at times when he did get opportunities out there on the ice. Wasn't good whatsoever for Philipp Kurashev. He did not receive a qualifying offer from the Blackhawks. That let him hit the free agent market, and he actually signed on with the San Jose Sharks, which will be interesting to see how he's going to fare with another young rebuilding team that's trying to head in the right direction. But Arvid Soderblom, Wyatt Kaiser, and Louis Crevier, no surprise here, did receive qualifying offers from the Blackhawks. Expected that to be the case for each and every one of them. For Kaiser, I think he's the most noteworthy here. Scott Powers of The Athletic, in his projection for Wyatt Kaiser, estimated that he'll get a deal probably around $2.5 million on a 3-year extension, if that's the way the Blackhawks were wanting to go with it. And I don't think any of these three guys are going to be signing long-term deals. If there was one that was going to be getting it, it would be Wyatt Kaiser, but I just don't think it really makes all that much sense at this point in time, as Kaiser doesn't have a ton of exposure at the NHL level, and there's also some kind of up in the air discussions maybe about his future, not because how he's fared on the ice, but just because of the number of left-handed defensemen the Blackhawks have in the system, and maybe going and flipping one of those for more forward help. Wyatt Kaiser could be an attractive piece to move for the Blackhawks. So for multiple different reasons, I expect this to probably be a 2-year deal for Wyatt Kaiser. A 3-year deal I would completely understand as well. I would estimate he'll probably get something around $2 million if I had to guess right here, right now. 2.5 seems like a little bit much, but again, the salary cap is going to go up significantly these next few seasons. So I think we all, as hockey fans, just have to understand guys are going to be starting to make a little bit more money. For Arvid Soderblom, I expected, just based on the chatter around him and the Blackhawks beat and everything leading up to him getting a qualifying offer, I expected that he was going to get one. But because, Laurent Brossoit, even though he was a ghost for the Blackhawks last year, Kyle Davidson said in his postseason presser that, if he's healthy, they'd love for him to compete with the backup spot. And then also with the way that Drew Commesso played for Rockford down the stretch of the season, I just wondered if Arvid Soderblom could maybe be expendable, even though last year went so much better for him in the NHL. It didn't end all that strong. After February, after the Four Nations face-off, he didn't really look like the same goaltender as he did in the first half or the first, 55, 60-ish games of the season. So I just wondered if that could make him expendable, but not surprising still that he's getting a qualifying offer here from the Blackhawks. I imagine it'll be for 2 years, I guess at around $1.5, $1.75 million for Soderblom. I mean, if you go and look at his record, I think since he's entered the NHL, no one has a worse win-loss record than Soderblom. And I know goalie wins, goalie losses aren't like a true way to depict an NHL netminder, but still, I think that'll probably be used in a case against him at arbitration. So I can't imagine Soderblom getting more than $1.75 million, in my opinion. But going to be really interesting to see what happens for that backup goaltender spot for the Blackhawks in free agency. And then last but not least, Louis Crevier. I'm guessing he'll get right around $950,000, $1 million on his next contract, 1 to 2 years. What he's got going for him is the Blackhawks, outside of Levshinov and Rinzel, don't have right-handed defensemen in the system. It's all left-handed defensemen, so that could give him an opportunity this year. But while he's developed nicely for a 7th-round pick, I'll give him and the Blackhawks development staff, the scouting department as well, I'll give them a lot of credit for that. I still don't really know if Louis Crevier has much of an NHL future, so we'll see what his role is going to be for the Blackhawks for however many years he signs on in his next contract with, but no real surprises here for the Blackhawks RFAs. Kaiser, Soderblom, Crevier. Now we're just playing the waiting game to see when the ink is going to be put onto the contract. Can take, some time here during the summer months going back and forth in these negotiations. But whenever those numbers become finalized, I'll be sure to go through them right here on Locked On Blackhawks. But that's going to take care of today's episode, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on the show. Happy 4th of July weekend. Get outside. Go enjoy the lovely weather with friends and family. Go grill up some brats, grill up some burgers, go and get out on the boat, hit the water, go swimming, whatever it may be. Live your life, Blackhawks fans. Enjoy your 4th of July weekends. I'll be back next. I might have an episode come out late Sunday night. We'll see how things go for me. I'll be covering the John Deere Classic this week as the PGA Tour comes to Illinois. It's the one time every single year they come to Illinois, so got to get on down to the Quad Cities over the weekend. Maybe I'll have an episode drop Sunday night. If not, I'll be back on Monday morning. Until then, again, everyone enjoy your weekends. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.